Now, because of this evolution in technology and these different types of hacks, we have more malicious activity that's starting to take place. And we see those among some of the more prominent types of attacks, which include denial of service attacks. We also have cases and reports of stock manipulation being done through different types of hacks. Also, ID theft and credit card theft. This is probably the one that we see almost daily in the news. In fact, we all know that there are companies that have made their whole business by protecting you from these types of hacks. Piracy. Yeah, a lot of people don't consider piracy a hack, but think about this one. Your goal as as an attacker is to possibly take away or get back at the man. And we'll talk about some of the motivations a little bit later on. By taking software or even hardware, and matter of fact, we can even talk about privacy at a more material level, such as knockoffs or, purses. You go to New York, or matter of fact, I was in New York about a year ago, and as I'm walking around, I have a guy come up to me and go, "Psst, Rolex." I'm like, what? And obviously their gain here is through this type of piracy is both monetary as well as, putting it to the man, which would be also another way of looking at our theft of services. By the way, when it comes to piracy, and I always love relating my little stories, but one of my favorite things to hear about is, I always get that phone call from a relative that's usually it starts with, "Hey, Uncle Dale," and yeah, I've even had neighbors, that come over and say, "Hey, can you come over and take a look? My computer's kind of running funny." And so I'll go over and I'll take a look at it, or I'll get in remotely and take a look at their machine. And I sit there and I go, "So how did you end up with a corporate edition of Norton Antivirus, considering you're just a home user?" And they're always like, "I got it off from a friend." Yeah, and usually you find out it's a pirated version. I'm like, yeah, that's the one thing you want to do. Yeah, let's download pirated software that's designed to protect your system. You don't think that's an issue? Or maybe by chance, if I was a smart attacker, I'm going to go through and create a version of this software and attach my own little back doors and hope that you torrent my software, my version of that software, and install it. So all these examples actually attract the attention of the criminal element. And again, when we talk about crime, it's not necessarily, looking at trying to steal money, except for that's usually the big one, but we're typically looking for data. And again, your system as being a resource, or maybe your network infrastructure as being a resource. There's one more, and that's vandalism. And typically this is digital vandalism. Not that I'm going to, hack your machine and have it start spray painting your office, start tagging. But the vandalism, as I mentioned before, if I can somehow deface, think about this one. If certain people could get a hold of Microsoft's website, I'm sure you could imagine the fun that they would love having with that. Now, these type of actions are so common today, we don't hear them reported of very often anymore. I remember back in the day when it was very, very easy to do, and we would see almost daily reports of someone's website being manipulated or vandalized. Some other famous hacks that we can talk about real quick here. Back in 1988, there was a gentleman by the name of Robert Morris. He actually was the one who created what they refer to as the very first worm. And we'll talk about worms in another course here, the difference between those and a virus. But this particular worm was actually created for a prank. He'd actually designed the worm to go through and count the number of systems connected to the internet. But because of a design flaw that he had, the worm actually ended up replicating. And it replicated very, very fast and indiscriminately. And as a result, it went around like crazy. And he was actually caught. He was convicted under the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. He didn't serve any jail time, as I recall, but I think he did have to do some community service. Probably something not to do with computers, huh? Anybody remember the Melissa virus back in 1999? This particular virus was very notorious for those of us that were around, and for those of you guys that weren't born. There was this really bad virus. This was actually an email virus that was designed to go through and email itself out to every user inside of an infected machine's address book, and then delete files on that system. Probably the most common ones that we hear of today, or the cases we hear today, are either being done by Anonymous, which is a huge hacking group that's typically attacking businesses as well as governments, as well as LutSec, which they've actually gone after news sources such as CNN, Fox. And what's kind of interesting when we talk about these newer attacks is, have you noticed something of interest here, is that whenever we hear of an attack, it's not that we found them today. It's always our systems were attacked 3 months ago. So whenever you hear in the news that someone's been attacked, or we have not been attacked, they just may not know about it yet.